If you ever hear the static beneath your bed, do not move until morning. I first heard it when I was 9 years old. My parents had just moved us into a drafty, ancient farmhouse in upstate New York, one of those creaky structures with warped floorboards, floral wallpaper peeling at the corners, and a permanent scent of mothballs and wood rot. It had charm, my mom said. History, my dad added. But even at that age, I knew something was off. The nights were too quiet, the shadows too thick. And then came the static. It started low, like the whisper of a radio left on in another room. A soft, crackling fuzz that hummed gently from beneath my bed. I remember sitting up, thinking maybe I'd left one of my toys on. But the noise wasn't mechanical. It wasn't even steady. It pulsed, almost like it was breathing. At first, I was curious. I knelt by the edge of the bed and slowly peered beneath. But there was nothing, just the dusty wooden floor and a few stray socks. Still, the static grew louder. And then, just as suddenly as it came, it stopped. Silence. My heart hammered in my chest for an hour before I finally slipped into uneasy sleep. It didn't happen every night. That was the worst part. It would skip days, even weeks, lulling me into a false sense of safety. But when it returned, I always knew. The air would grow dense, and I could feel something watching me from under the bed. I never dared to look again. I'd lie completely still, the covers drawn tightly over my head, holding my breath until morning. Over time, I convinced myself it was a childhood nightmare. A weird auditory hallucination. Something I'd outgrown. And for a while, it stopped. But last month, it returned. I'm 32 now. I work long hours in tech support, and I recently moved into a new apartment after a messy breakup. The place is a fifth-floor walk-up in an old building, charmingly dilapidated with a radiator that clanks at night and windows that never fully seal. It was cheap, and I needed a change. The first few nights were fine. Until, during a particularly stormy evening, I woke up at 3:14 a.m. to that familiar sound. The static. Faint but unmistakable, radiating from beneath my bed. I froze, the childhood fear returning in full force like a slap to the face. I wanted to move, wanted to check, to rationalize it away, but some part of me knew better. The air was too cold. The shadows too sharp. I stayed still. For hours. And then I heard the voice. It wasn't loud. In fact, it was almost buried in the crackle of static. But it was there, whispering in a language I didn't understand, syllables twisting like wet silk around the edges of my mind. My limbs trembled under the sheets. I felt a pressure beneath the mattress, like something shifting its weight. And then, the breath. A cold, rattling exhale that brushed against my cheek from beneath the bed frame. My body wanted to scream, but I clamped my mouth shut. I remembered the rule, do not move until morning. When daylight finally broke, the static vanished. I didn't check. I couldn't. Instead, I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's for a few days. But I couldn't run forever. I returned last week, and every night since then, I've heard it. Closer now. Stronger. Sometimes I hear movement, shuffling, dragging. One night, I swear I felt a hand press against the mattress from underneath. I didn't sleep at all. Last night, I made a mistake. I fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from work. Sometime around 2 a.m., I stumbled into my bed, half conscious and dazed. And I moved. The static started minutes later. It was deafening this time, like 1,000 insects chirping at once. And then I felt something grab my ankle. Just once. A light touch. Like a warning. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I think it knows I forgot the rule. I think it's testing me. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it wants. But I've learned that this thing, whatever it is, feeds on movement. Curiosity. Weakness. Maybe it waits for your body to flinch, to shift, to breathe too loudly. That's when it decides. Tonight, the static is already buzzing. I can feel it crawling up through the floorboards. The air smells like burnt dust and copper. I don't think I'll last much longer. But if you hear it too, if the soft crackle begins to rise from under your bed, no matter how quiet or harmless it sounds, don't look. Don't move. Don't even blink. Because it remembers you. And it's been waiting a long, long time. I don't know how long I sat there in bed, paralyzed by the heavy, suffocating weight of dread. The static didn't fade, it grew louder, sharper, like radio waves made of splinters. It was as though my ears were being tuned into something unholy, something not meant for human understanding. Each crackle carried whispers now. Words. Names. My name. At first, I thought it was just fear playing tricks on me. But then I heard my brother's voice. He's been dead for 3 years. "It's cold down here," it said. "Come feel it. You'll see." And then it laughed. His laugh. But twisted, broken, like it had been played through a rusted tape recorder and slowed down. At one point, I couldn't resist. I peeked over the edge of the bed. I wish I hadn't. There were eyes. Not glowing. Not red. Just eyes. Human eyes. But too many. Packed together like pearls on a string. Wet, blinking in unison, staring up at me from the dark gap between my mattress and the floorboards. And then they grinned. Not the eyes, but something deeper. Something that wasn't just under my bed, it was my bed. The realization shattered something in my brain. I understood then that the thing had always been there, dormant, patient. My bed wasn't a haven. It was a mouth. And I had been sleeping in its throat. I don't remember when I passed out. Maybe the fear overwhelmed me. Maybe it reached up and touched something it shouldn't have. All I know is I woke up the next morning sprawled on the floor beside the bed. My ears were bleeding. My nose too. The sheets were soaked with sweat and something thicker. I checked the bottom of the bed. Nothing. No eyes. No static. But the smell was still there, like rotting leaves, old skin, and dust that had never seen the sun. I moved out that afternoon. I tried everything, therapy, medication, sleep studies. Nothing helped. Because the thing didn't stay under the bed. It moved. I started hearing the static in hotel rooms, in borrowed apartments, even on flights. Once, on a train, I dozed off against the window and woke to find my cheeks smeared with blood and a faint crackle echoing through the air vents. The worst part is, no one else hears it. Not my girlfriend, not my coworkers, not even the sleep specialists who strapped me to machines and told me I was perfectly normal. But the entity knows I hear it. It wants me to hear it. I think it feeds on the attention. Every time I acknowledge it, every time I flinch at the hiss of white noise or the shadow under a chair, it grows stronger. Louder. Closer. Last week, I thought I was safe. I stayed awake all night, every night. But exhaustion is cruel. I slept for just a moment, just a blink, and when I opened my eyes, the world was static. Not just sound, but vision. Everything around me buzzed and shimmered like an old analog TV with no signal. I tried to move, but I couldn't. My limbs were pinned. My mouth was sealed shut. And then it climbed onto the bed. I didn't see it directly. I felt it. Weight. Breath. A wet tongue brushing against my cheek. It whispered, "You're mine now." Since then, it hasn't stopped following me. The static is louder than ever. It's in the mirrors, the radio, the silence between words and conversations. I see things now, faces and reflections that don't belong to me, shadows moving in perfect stillness. And when I close my eyes, I'm under its bed. Last night, it spoke again. It said I was the static. That I was becoming part of it. I don't know what that means, but my skin feels thinner. My reflection lags behind me. Sometimes I wake up and don't recognize my own voice. So if you ever hear static beneath your bed, no matter how faint, no matter how curious you are, don't move. Don't speak. Don't even breathe loud enough for it to notice. Because if it notices you, it never forgets. And it's always, always hungry. And when it finally climbs into your bed, you won't feel scared. You'll feel warm. Comforted. Like coming home. Because by then, you'll already belong to it. Just like I do now. The static doesn't stop anymore. It doesn't come and go like before. It's just always there. Hello, grating hum like television snow melted into the marrow of my bones. It lives beneath me, beneath the creaking floorboards of my bedroom, threading itself through every sleepless second of the night. My ears ring constantly. I've learned to sleep with a buzzing in my head, and even in dreams, the sound bleeds through, a constant, gnawing reminder that I'm never truly alone. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. Who wouldn't? But madness doesn't leave claw marks under your bed. It doesn't drag its cracked fingernails along the slats of the floor and whisper your name in a voice that sounds just like your mother's, but isn't. Madness doesn't slip long, cold fingers through your mattress springs and tap against your spine in the dead of night. This thing does. One night, I made the mistake of whispering back. I said, "What do you want?" It paused. The static throbbed with anticipation. Then it said, in 1,000 broken voices, "Room to stretch." The air in the room thickened, as if every atom had been soaked in dread. I felt it rise beneath me, not physically, not yet, but spiritually. Its presence ballooned out into the dark, curling around the corners of the room, pressing against the closet doors, seeping into the cracks of the window frame. I didn't sleep at all that night. I didn't even blink. And when dawn finally spilled pale and reluctant across my sheets, I saw the edges of a print burned into the dust under my bed. A handprint, impossibly long and thin, with too many fingers. Since then, I haven't asked it questions. I just listen. Every night, it whispers things. Things that sound like confessions from the dead or prayers spat backward. Sometimes, it laughs, a sharp, high-pitched sound like glass grinding against tile. Other nights, it weeps. Deep, hollow sobs that rattle the springs and smell faintly of rot. I once tried to sleep on the couch downstairs, thinking maybe if I just moved rooms, it wouldn't find me. But when I woke up, I wasn't on the couch. I was back in my bed, mattress damp with sweat and cold, with a fresh gash in the floorboards under me. It had moved closer. Now, the static bleeds into my waking life. I hear it in the hum of the refrigerator, in the silence between songs, in the flicker of streetlights. I know it's not confined to my room anymore. It's growing, learning, stretching, just like it said it would. Sometimes I think I see it out of the corner of my eye, something impossibly thin and long, crawling across ceilings, clinging to shadows, folding into spaces that should be too small. Last night, I saw it more clearly than ever before. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. It was perched on the edge of my bed, hunched and grinning, its face stitched together from broken radio parts and fragments of forgotten memories. Its eyes were empty sockets crackling with static. And as it leaned in close, its breath like frostbitten electricity, it whispered. Soon, there will be no morning. I haven't slept since. And now, even the daylight feels fake, like a stage light barely holding the darkness at bay. I know it's coming, seeping further into my world. I see the same haunted, sleepless look on the faces of others in town now. Children with rings under their eyes. Old women murmuring to no one. Radios that burst into white noise for no reason. It's not just beneath my bed anymore. It's beneath yours. It's beneath everyone's. And when it finally rises, when the static becomes silence, that perfect silence that falls right before something terrible happens, I'll know it's ready. Ready to stretch fully. Ready to climb. So now, when I lay in bed, I don't listen for the static. I listen for the moment it finally stops.